Welcome, everyone. You've joined us for another deep dive, and this time we're digging into some really unique concepts. You brought this fascinating text to our attention, The Morning Murli, from April 12th, 2025. Now, this isn't your usual news report or anything like that. A Murli, in this context, is a kind of spiritual discourse. And this specific one, it seems to focus heavily on knowledge, self-awareness, and a very particular view of spiritual action or service.
That's right. And what's really striking, I think, is how this source claims to offer a viewpoint you don't often find, in mainstream religious texts. It maps out a specific reality based on what it terms Gyan, Vijyan, and Aegean. It also talks about a unique group, the Brahmin clan, and a specific path to spiritual purity. So our mission today is really to unpack these core ideas just as they're presented in this material. It offers a pretty distinct perspective on, well, everything.
Okay, let's jump right into that. This Brahmin clan. The text makes a pretty bold claim early on, doesn't it? That this group is unique and, interestingly, that its existence right now in what it calls the confluence age, well, it says that's not even mentioned in established scriptures. That's quite a starting point.
It really is. And the text suggests this uniqueness comes from their specific grasp of Gyan. Gyan here is defined as basically knowledge of the world cycle, how time repeats. This cyclical idea isn't entirely unheard of course, but the way it's detailed here, linking individual purity to the cosmic timeline, that's notable. Then you have Vijyan, that's described as soul consciousness, remembrance, like a state of yoga, really, beyond just knowing things intellectually.
So more experiential.
Exactly, moving past just head knowledge, which, again, you find echoes of in mystical traditions, though the terms and methods differ. And Aegean, that's simply ignorance of the specific understanding of Gyan and Vijyan, the confluence age you mentioned. That's framed as this crucial, specific window of time when all this knowledge is being revealed.
Okay, the confluence age. Can you flesh that out a bit more? What does it signify here?
Sure. Think of it like a transition point. The meeting place, the junction between the end of the old cycle and the start of the new one. It's presented as this very specific, limited period where this transformative knowledge becomes available.
Right. And here's something else that might catch your attention. The text mentions figures like Pajapita Brahma or Adidev and Adidevi Jagadamba. Now, those names might sound familiar, but the interpretation here is different. It says Jagadamba isn't Brahma's wife. She's described as his adopted, mouth-born creation. And he claims their real identities aren't actually known by the wider world. That challenges some common stories, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. The text is very deliberate about making that distinction. It seems geared towards setting its understanding apart. It's highlighting a very specific spiritual lineage, particular way creation happens within its framework. And what's also key, I think, is that these Brahmins, despite temples existing for Brahma and goddesses, they are explicitly called human beings, living now, not deities.
Right, not gods or goddesses themselves. And building on that unique lineage idea, there's this concept of being adopted by the unlimited Father. This suggests a kind of spiritual inheritance, right? A family connection beyond the physical. It really makes you think about belonging and ancestry in a different way.
Precisely. It's like a redefinition of family, of inheritance, but within the specific spiritual context. This idea of receiving something directly from this unlimited Father that seems absolutely central to who they believe they are and what they're meant to do.
Okay, let's shift focus a bit. Moving on to what they call salvation and this whole world cycle concept. The text mentions a golden age, the Sun Dynasty, which is equated with salvation. And on the opposite, the Iron Age, the Kingdom of Ravan, representing degradation. It also slots in a Moon Dynasty somewhere. Can you maybe break down this cycle for us?
Certainly. So the world cycle, as this text lays it out, is this continuous movement between ages. The core belief seems to be that souls originally belonged to that pure Sun Dynasty, and they've gone through a cycle of specifically 84 births. Over time, they gradually lost their purity, leading down to the current Iron Age. The Moon Dynasty fits in as a stage with less purity than the Golden Age, but still better than the Iron Age. It's quite a distinct view compared to linear history.
And here's another point that really stands out. The text claims this specific knowledge isn't found in scriptures. Why? Because it says those scriptures belong to the path of devotion, which it says is destined to be destroyed eventually. That's a pretty radical statement about the role of existing religious texts.
It is, yeah. The text positions this current time as a transition, a shift away from that path of diversion towards this knowledge-based understanding. And what's fascinating here is this idea that people right now are developing sanskaras, like spiritual imprints or tendencies of ruling. It suggests a future role for them in the coming Sun and Moon dynasties.
So our actions now are kind of imprinting our future roles in the next cycle. And surprisingly, it even includes scientists in those future ages, using their science knowledge
Well,
based on these same sanskaras.
yeah.
So it's not throwing out worldly knowledge entirely.
Exactly. It implies a kind of continuity of skills, just applied within a different, pure spiritual context and for a different purpose. Their scientific abilities or sanskars remain, but they'll be used within that golden and silver age environment.
Okay, let's shift gears again. Let's talk about this idea of spiritual business and purity. The text mentions an easy effort involved in this spiritual service, this business, as a way to detach from worldly stuff and focus on claiming that future kingdom. How does that work in practice? What does spiritual business mean here?
Well, as presented, it seems to mean dedicating time and effort to sharing this knowledge and living by its principles. The idea is, by getting actively involved in this service, your focus naturally shifts. It moves away from materialistic attachments. And that makes the effort to, attain purity and that future kingdom feel less like a burden, more like a natural consequence.
But it does seem to acknowledge everyday life,
Yeah.
too, right? It mentions needing to care for one's creation, meaning family. So it's not saying completely abandon your responsibilities.
That's a really crucial point. It's about balance. The text emphasizes that while this spiritual service is vital, you still have to fulfill your worldly duties, especially towards family. It's not presented as an either-or thing, but more about integrating the spiritual into the practical.
And then it makes a distinction between the Father, as the ocean of knowledge guiding towards purity, and the physical Brahma figure giving guidance on more sort of practical things. That seems like a specific division of labor.
Yes, exactly. The unlimited Father, often referred to later as Shiv Baba, is the ultimate source, the source of the spiritual wisdom, the one directing towards purity. The physical Brahma figure acts more like a practical guide, an example, offering advice, showing how to live according to the principles day to day.
And the main spiritual practice seems to boil down to constantly remembering the Father. Follow the Father's Shrimat, it says. And Shrimat, just for clarity, basically means the Father's direct guidance or teachings. But it makes the point that this remembrance needs to be soul-conscious, right? Going beyond just a physical idea.
Precisely. It's about cultivating this continuous awareness of the unlimited Father as a soul, getting beyond body consciousness. It's compared to how a child remembers their physical dad, but understanding the spiritual father is non-physical beyond that.
Now, about this Father figure's arrival and role. The text describes a really unique method for giving knowledge by entering an ordinary body and then naming that person Brahma because of his renunciation. That's a very specific mechanism for divine communication.
It is indeed. This idea of entering an ordinary body is presented as a specific way the Father imparts this knowledge directly at this time. And renaming him Brahma, explicitly linked to renunciation, emphasizes the transformation of that chosen person, that vehicle.
It then introduces these concepts, the Rosary of Brahmins, the Rosary of Rudra, and the Rosary of Vishnu, explaining them as stages of spiritual progress achieved through something called the pilgrimage of remembrance. It sounds like a kind of structured path.
Yes, those rosaries seem to represent the different levels, different stages of attainment on the journey back to purity. And the pilgrimage of remembrance, just constantly remembering the Father, is described as the absolute key to moving through those stages, ultimately aiming for the Rosary of Vishnu, which signifies a high spiritual status.
The text also takes time to clarify phrases like hum, so, hum, and om. It contrasts its understanding with other interpretations, like those of sannyasis. It emphasizes om, just means I, a soul, and hum, so, hum is about the soul's journey through stages. I was that, I have become that. It's really defining its own terms.
That's right. It's clearly distinguishing its vocabulary and meaning from other traditions. Rejecting the sannyasi view of I, a soul, and the supreme soul is a key point of difference they seem to stress.
And this father figure is presented as the one who reveals the accurate meaning of scriptures like the Vedas, contrasting this direct knowledge with what it calls the wasted efforts of devotion, building temples, penance, spending money on rituals. That's a pretty significant reevaluation.
It is. The text suggests the path of devotion, while maybe having some role historically, is ultimately less effective than this direct knowledge from the Father. The emphasis really shifts from external acts and rituals towards internal remembrance and understanding.
And finally, it touches on this idea of past wealth taken from Hardat India being returned, linking that somehow to current world events from their perspective. And it keeps stressing that remembering the Father is the way to burn away sins, highlighting the simplicity of that core practice. It's weaving a kind of commentary on the present world into this spiritual narrative.
Yes, it offers a very specific lens for interpreting contemporary events, suggesting a kind of cosmic rebalancing or justice. And hammering home that remembrance is the main tool for purification really underscores how central that practice is to their path.
Okay, so bring it towards a close here. The text gives some final guidance, the essence for dharna. And dharna means essentially to really imbibe and practice these principles. It stresses engaging in that spiritual business to help purify others, remembering the Father introvertedly, quietly inside. Also, avoiding devotional language like, "Oh God," and cultivating egolessness. These seem like the key takeaways for daily life.
Exactly. These are the practical marching orders, you could say, applying the core teachings. The focus on introverted remembrance and becoming egoless really highlights the internal transformation being aimed for.
And the blessing shared is about having a combined Shiv-Shakti form, using that to spread elevated vibrations through your attitude and thoughts. Visualizing spreading fragrances of happiness, peace, love is quite a powerful image of interchange affecting the outer world.
hmm That combined Shiv Shakti form represents integrating divine power, Shiv, and divine energy, Shakti, within yourself. The idea is that this enables you to positively influence your surroundings just through your inner state, your intentions, spreading those good vibrations.
Then there's the Avyak signal, remaining constantly victorious by being aware of this combined form. And the slogan, receiving a treasure store of happiness from the bestower of happiness, is a sign of his love.
Mhm.
That Avyak signal seems to refer to maintaining this constant inner spiritual awareness and strength. It's about inner resilience and knowing the source of real happiness.
Precisely. These final points just reinforce that core message: internal transformation, staying spiritually aware, and recognizing the blessings that come from connecting with that bestower of happiness.
So wrapping up this deep dive into the morning Murli, we've really explored quite a bit this unique Brahman identity, defined by its understanding of Jayan and Vijjan, the cyclical view of world history, the past back to purity through remembrance, and this spiritual service. And all of it presented within a framework that explicitly claims to offer something beyond conventional scriptures. You can really see how that specific understanding of Jayan, of the cycle, shapes their whole view of history in the future, setting it apart from standard linear views. It certainly gives you a lot to think about.
Indeed. This text presents a very distinct lens, doesn't it? A different way to understand knowledge, the self, how the world cycle unfolds. It definitely challenges many common beliefs about spiritual identity, divinity, the purpose of religious practice. And it's fascinating how it sees skills, like science, carrying over across cycles, just used differently. Makes you ponder the enduring nature of certain human capabilities, perhaps.
And that really leads us to our final provocative thought for you, our listener. If our understanding of the world cycle and spiritual evolution was fundamentally different from mainstream beliefs, as presented here, how might that actually shift our priorities, our actions? Right now, in the present moment, it really invites some personal reflection, doesn't it? On the nature of knowledge itself, our own identity, and maybe our connection to something larger, all through the lens of this unique source. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.